Welcome to another episode of Planet Possible. We're delighted that you're joining us to hear evidence-led discussion about topics that are critical to the way we manage our water, nature and climate. A huge thanks to our sponsors, BMA, Arup and MWH Treatment, and you'll hear a little more about them later. We're really grateful for their support in bringing the podcast to you. And if you're new to Planet Possible, I'm Niki Roach. I am an enthusiastic connector of people and ideas and a fellow of CIWEM, the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management. This week's episode is all about the latest innovations linked to flooding. As our climate changes, more of us will be affected by flooding. So what are the latest strategies, fresh ideas and new technologies that are going to help us prepare and adapt? I went to the annual Flood and Coast Conference in Liverpool to find out. The economic impact of flooding on businesses can be immense. So first up, I was interested to hear more about a new project in Leeds that gets local companies to directly fund natural solutions further upstream in the catchment. And I spoke to Jonathan Moxon, director of the Aire Resilience Company. Tell me what the problem that the Aire Resilience Company is trying to solve.
So we built a traditional flood scheme in Leeds, protecting lots of businesses, lots of homes, but we needed the catchment to operate in a different way as well, to complement all the steel, all the concrete. So the natural flood management measures that we need to be funded, and we need to find a way to pay the farmers, pay the landowners to do that for a long time, and actually there isn't really a funding mechanism for that. So we felt we needed an entity, a company that could fill that gap. And what we wanted to do is go to the private sector and say to them, there's a benefit to you of us reducing flood risk and keeping that flood risk reduced for a long time. But what we need to do is work with the landscape, and we need to change the landscape in the air catchment. But we need your money to help us to do that for a long time. So we're the interface between private businesses that have got an interest in reducing the impacts of climate change and the air catchment, and the landowners that have the land in the catchment and want to do the right thing as well for the places that are affected by flood risk downstream.
So for listeners that might not be familiar with the air catchment, just give us a little sense of where it is, and I suppose why you need to do natural flood management as well as building classic flood defences there.
Leeds is based within the air catchment, further down the catchment, and then as it rises up through Bradford and up into the Yorkshire Dales. So the source of the River Aire is actually at Malham, up in the Yorkshire Dales, about 700 square kilometres of land, different land use, but largely livestock farming, sheep farming, heavily grazed, heavily compacted soils, not a huge amount of woodland and canopy cover, some large estates in there, but lots of actual long-term farming practices passed down from generations between farms. But then we've got a huge economic and business centre in Leeds. Lots of people live in Leeds are affected by flood risk. So we've got this interplay between the two places, and we need to try and make that connection between what we do in the upper catchment does actually have a tangible difference to Leeds itself. So we've modelled that impact. We think we can do enough natural flood management to have a tangible impact on reducing flood risk in Leeds. And there's only so much you can do with the engineering. So we built the scheme to protect it for the future, but actually we need it to work harder. So we need to top up the engineering works by reducing flood risk by a further 5%, but we think we can only do that through managing the land in a different way.
So interesting that in essence the engineering's gone as far as it can, so now looking further upstream to slow the flow, I guess, and so on. Why is this so innovative? Because it isn't something that's done across the board, as I understand it. Give me a bit of a sense of how innovative it is, really.
I think there are lots of brilliant projects around the country that are looking at elements of this, and I think what we've tried to do is take a situation where you've got a city with a huge number of businesses there, all with different drivers, all with different interests in the natural environment, and we're taking a landscape where we understand the risk as well. We think there is a real tangible link between engineering work and the natural environment. What we've done, which is really unique, given the conversations we continue to have, I think we have started to crack a nut in terms of how you talk to the private sector and listen to what they're actually interested in, and then enable them to come into some level of simple contract that says, do you know what, if you give us money for this thing, we will go away and make that thing happen, and then we'll provide you with a relationship with the landowners, and we can translate what they're doing into something that means something for your business. So they get something really simple, they get something that's not costing them a huge amount of money, but they do get something very relatable, and they get a connection to the natural environment, they get a connection to the issues that we're facing. It's difficult to do something practical about climate change sometimes, and I think we're offering something quite straightforward. So we're not trying to fix every problem in the air catchment, but we are making steps towards it being more climate resilient, and I think sometimes it's hard to put that into practicalities, and I think they appreciate that. It's like, do you know, this is a fairly simple thing, and you can be part of that. And I think we've created something that allows that equation to be completed in a simple way.
Well, let's talk about the how then briefly, because it sounds really practical, and I'm always interested in what's really possible. So give me a bit of a sense of how you're actually doing what you're talking about.
As a result of building the engineering scheme, we've then got an amount of flood risk reduction that we know we need to achieve by a certain point. We've mapped the catchment and decided actually there's some key locations in the catchment where we could focus our energy. So we've said we'd do 70% of what we do in certain key locations, but we're open to working anywhere because it's about shifting the dial in the way that land is managed. I think we've got a type of land management that we think is more effective than others in that particular situation. And then we've got a really simple form of contracts. The landowners are really clear. This is the deal. This is what we'd pay you for certain interventions. This is the type of contract that we'd have with you. We're brokering those deals through trusted partners in the catchment, like Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, the Aire Rivers Trust. So we're not a new entity going in and trying to build in relationships. We're building on those relationships that already exist. And then I think we're trying to use existing skills within the private sector around how do we talk business to business? How do we do business to business sales? We're selling an ecosystem service, which is a little bit different for a council flood risk officer, but we've brought people in who've got those skills, can talk to people about economic benefits, social benefits, and looking at actually what's in your corporate strategy, what are you trying to achieve as an organisation already, and does the Aire Resilience Company play a part in doing that? So in effect, we have a 5-year contract with a business and we have a 5-year contract with a landowner. We need this to happen for the next 50, 60 years, but realistically, people are comfortable with a 5-year contract, and we get to the end of 5 years and someone has magically decided this is a really good thing, you don't need to pay us to do it anymore, then fine, we can walk away. And actually, if it's really difficult to do and we've not completely cracked it, again, we'd walk away. But I think what we've got seems to fit. People seem to want to do it. We have got 20 businesses now, all different sizes, paying money in. The money's sat in the bank and we're paying farmers. So we're doing it for real. And I think that helps as well. I think sometimes perfection is the enemy of good, isn't it? And I think what we've tried to do is say, can we get started? Can we show people it's possible? And it now is. And that's gaining a lot of traction because people trust it now. They think, oh, somebody else has tried this. And it's finding those businesses that are willing to lead. Some people say, oh, we're interested in this because it's different. We're interested in it because it's new. And ideally, we need to translate that into long-term relationships. But some people have backed this because it is different.
As somebody who lives in Leeds and lived through the flooding that we had, Christmas flooding, and the river kind of appeared out of nowhere, it felt like. I think we suddenly realised that we had the River Aire running right next to one of the major routes into the city, which kind of often, because it was sort of hidden with industrial units and so on, you'd forget it was there. So, and city centre flats that were underwater and garages that were full and all sorts of challenges. So I think it's a really practical solution. It would be interesting to see how it develops. I've got a final question for you, Jonathan, if that's okay. I'm going to pass you the now famous Planet Possible magic wand. I want you to give it a wave. You can make anything possible in this space. Tell me what you want.
What we need to do is try and make sure that all the good things that are happening around the country, we're not competing with any of that it's really complementary. I think there are conversations that we need to have at a local level, directly with some of these businesses, but we also need to network and have a good, strong relationship with other people that are working in this space nationally, because some of those conversations are appropriate at a national scale. I think we need to be really careful we don't cut across each other, but there's a really good potential for us to work in a complementary way across the country, do good things in different parts of the country, get the best out of the relationships. That would be my wish, I think.
I love that. Collaboration over competition. I'm here for it. Thank you so much for joining us on Planet Possible.
Thank you very much.
Most of the UK's population lives in urban areas. So what can be done at a city scale to make progress on flooding? United Utilities provides water and wastewater services to Liverpool, where the Flood and Coast Conference was taking place. A group of us headed out on a tour of their projects around the city, and then I got a chance to speak to a couple of the team that made those projects happen. All right, so after a rather windy but very beautiful walk around Liverpool in the sunshine, we're back inside the conference venue and I'm joined by Tim Armour and Johnny Phillips from the rainwater management team at United Utilities. Tim, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about what we've seen on our wonderful walk around your glorious city.
Okay, so on our windy walk, we saw 4 site visits. We had a nice tour towards Bwlb Street, which we had some rain gardens and some murals done by local artists showing the history of Liverpool, drainage, and moving towards what we're trying to imagine in the future to be a more greener, spongier city. We then walked towards a community garden. So that's with a local community group where we've installed loads of rainwater storage and loads of planters and really just trying to help that community out as best as we can. Thirdly, we went to a school, so a very large playground, where we've completely transformed that playground, installed rain gardens which capture all the rain from the playground and also helping to create some new spaces for the kids to play, saving the school some money on their bills, helping us reduce spills, helping us reduce flooding. So really fantastic win-win all around. And then lastly, we went up to Liverpool 1, which is our big shopping centre in Liverpool, where we showed showed how we're going to imagine Liverpool and showcase some amazing work we're going to do to regenerate our town centre, working with the community, but also investing in their projects. So where they're going to green up their town and city, we're going to invest in their projects and make them go further.
So, Johnny, as clearly a proud Liverpudlian, tell me a little bit about the city and I guess why you are doing rainwater management in Liverpool at all.
Liverpool has 86% combined sewer, which is some of the highest that you'll see around the country, and that makes it imperative as to why we've got to think about managing rainwater where it lands and separating out to make a sustainable network infrastructure going forward. The environment's dramatically improved since the 1980s, where it was declared ecologically dead. Huge amounts of investment going into treatment. The MePass, which is the huge pipe that runs along the front of the Mersey, taking sewerage through to our treatment works, and that's led to now 43 species of fish being found in the Mersey, occasionally dolphins as well, which is really exciting. We're really proud of that improvement. But it's a huge step now in terms of going further, better and faster together. We really need to start thinking about how we integrate rainwater management and spongier principles into the fabric of the city, taking it from where the first combined sewers were here, as that's on our mural, James Newlands who did that, and taking it into the next frontier now of building up on that legacy of being the first in the combined sewers, being on that first sponge city concept for the country and taking those principles from around the world.
And we've heard a bit already today about sponge cities. It's a lovely term, and I think it does exactly what it says on the tin. And as we're standing here chatting, we're looking out across the Mersey, and it is extraordinary to think that's a river that was ecologically dead sort of less than 40 years ago, and now far from it really. I'm interested in understanding what makes this special, because I get a really strong sense from walking around and from talking to you both about the projects that what you're doing here is a bit different, is a little bit special.
So it's taken a lot of strategic work up front, really trying to get our strategies supported by regulators, looking at how we'll green up our towns and cities overall. But we've had that really good support from our regulators, really good support internally, and we're getting good support from the councils, and really working with the willing councils and people like that to really try and green up their towns and cities. It's just a really fantastic opportunity. We really want to plant all the seeds now, grow as much as we can, and over the next 10, 50 years, completely transform the Northwest to be greener. We really do think that all town centres at some point are going to get regenerated in some form. We can come along and invest and do that at the same time, dig once, do it all great, and then hopefully over the time that'll be our strategy going forwards.
So it all sounds lovely, right? If I was being slightly challenging, you could imagine people saying, yeah, dig up the road once, great, and get everything done at the same time. How are you managing that in practice, Johnny? If I come to you, tell me about the realities of doing that. What makes that difficult, and how have you actually managed to do that here in Liverpool when others have tried and often not succeeded?
I think we've used the Flood and Coast Conference as a really good opportunity to show and tell what this actually means and what it actually looks like to the rest of the industry, water companies, regulators and consultants as well. And we've had a really good collaborative approach that's been developed with our partners, so Liverpool City Council, Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, and the other partners help design and deliver these features as well. And they've really bought into the principles of change that we want to deliver and understood the pace and the urgency and the need. And by working with them, explaining the context as to how we can then tell our story here at this conference is the amazing work. They've really been able to buy in, and we've been able to kind of move through those challenges and barriers and blockers that we've traditionally seen by everyone really kind of just coming around to the principle of what we want to do, that simple message of managing rain where it falls, delivering wider environmental and societal benefits. And by people buying in, we've been able to overcome all those barriers, which is really fantastic, and ended up with obviously these schemes that we've been able to get into the ground.
I mean, the playground in particular was, I thought, really special, and I would imagine the kids are going to absolutely love it. So final question for you both. You probably know what's coming. Adjacent to me is the Planet Possible Magic Wand. I'm going to give it to you both. You can give it a wave. You can make anything possible in this space. Tim, what would you want?
For us, we really need to deliver over the next few years. That's really important. We need to show that we can do it as a water company, but also as a Northwest. And we want to demonstrate to our regulators and demonstrate to the public that actually we can do things differently, and actually we can make our towns greener and actually get these multiple benefits for water companies, for the environment, for the communities, and really go from there. So really, if we can get a magic wand to help us deliver, get that further support from regulators, and just make this bigger and bigger and bolder, and just grow and grow and grow.
And Johnny, what about you?
I think it's really for communities and people to understand the principles of rainwater management the benefits of managing rain where it falls and the value of the precious rainwater that we've got here in the northwest and across the country. If we're going to change culture over time for people to then really value and manage that rainwater, stop it getting into sewers, deliver all that wider outcome, we've really got to think creatively as to how we convey that message. So that's why we've done things like the murals to depict what that looks like. The magic wand would be that we're able to translate how important water is and that message to our customers and communities so that we can get those principles bought in and really start to scale up and deliver a huge change in how we manage rainwater across the UK.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
BMA is a next-gen AI decision intelligence software company. Their cloud-based platform, Decisio, redefines how water and energy companies approach their infrastructure planning to make better, faster and more connected critical decisions, simultaneously achieving net zero, resilience and financial sustainability. MWH Treatment is one of the UK's leading water and wastewater process contractors. MWH offers a truly integrated design and build service that's uniquely dedicated to the water industry. With an innovative and future-facing approach, everything MWH does is guided by its purpose to shape a better world. So we've talked about some large-scale approaches to flooding, catchment-based, city-based, but what about on a smaller scale? Coming up, hear me talk to Mary Long-Dhonau, also known as Flood Mary, about the latest bits of household kit designed to help homeowners prevent and recover from flooding. Plus, flood risk manager Tor Coombes talks about the role that councils play. But let's zoom down to the scale of an individual garden and hear from Leon Davis, who is on a mission to make rainwater management more effective and visually appealing.
Well, I'm a garden designer. That's basically my profession. And I work with United Utilities, mainly on the water harvesting side. It's taking water harvesting maybe to the next level, so moving away from your standard plastic water butts, looking at how we can make it a little bit more attractive, a little bit more accessible to people. Maybe they've got a dual function, those sort of elements. In this particular situation, we were asked to look at the water harvesting capacity, potting benches, seating, wheelchair accessible planters. So bringing in a number of different elements to complement the existing garden and also increasing water capacity.
So if I've understood correctly, United Utilities have basically got somebody who is designing gardens and ways of taking rainwater harvesting and using it in gardens in a kind of more innovative way.
Yes, yeah. Well, the relationship goes back to 2021 when I designed a show garden for the Tatton show, and the relationship's built from there, really. And that garden was based around the same sort of concepts. How can people think creatively about water harvesting in small spaces specifically, and it's kind of just sort of snowballed from there. I think it's taken a bit of a more open mind approach to it. The sort of the go-to is the plastic water butts that you see, but you can think a little bit more creatively about what containers can be used. And I guess the cycle, if we've got an overflow, where's that overflow going to? Generally it might go to a drain, but can that be diverted into another water butt? Can it be diverted to a planter, a soak away? Can we plant differently? If it is going to as a soak away, think about the planting. Can we create a sort of a more bog garden situation? So it snowballs basically.
We've spoken about gardens, so now let's focus on people's houses. It's time to hear about the many new bits of tech that can help homeowners and renters with property flooding. So I am standing inside the Floodmobile and I'm here with
Mary Long-Dhonau, better known as Flood Mary.
Tell me a little bit about why this Floodmobile exists.
Well, the Floodmobile is really a portable exhibition trailer, and it's packed full of 55 different interventions to exhibit to people how they can better protect their homes and, very importantly, adapt their homes against future floods so they can recover sooner after a flood. When people get flooded, they don't get a handbook on how to deal with it, and especially now that Flood Re, the government-backed insurance system, is offering people up to £10,000 to put in either things like flood barriers or flood doors and self-closing air bricks and toilet bungs, or perhaps a flood recoverable kitchen. So we go into newly flooded communities to be that handbook for them to come in and touch and feel and see and ask questions about what's that and what does it do.
Just give me a bit of a canter through some of the devices and approaches that you think are the most important or the ones that you talk to people about most frequently.
Well, first of all, most floods in this country are under 0.3 of a metre. And flood water, let's give it a perspective, 5 cubic litres of flood water or 5 builders' rubble sacks full to the top of water can go into one air brick every hour. So you go to multiple homes who have got umpteen air bricks. So I always say to them, let's do the maths, I can't. But if people could get something like, just behind you, Niki, is a self-closing air brick. So the minute the flood water hits it, it shuts and it will stop the water from going in. Also, one of these, on a windy day, the valves will rise and stop the heating from going out and the cold air coming in. So it's got a double whammy with it, and I love that idea.
Is this the kind of thing that people can do easily? Is it expensive?
It's best to get a jobbing builder who would know what to do. Somebody that's excellent at DIY could probably do it, but I would always say go to your local builder to fit it for safety's sake, really.
What else have we got, Mary, that you would recommend?
Just behind you is an ordinary looking door, but that's actually a flood door. And the minute you lock it, it's got some gasket inside and they will seal and form a pressure and the flood water will be stopped coming in to about 0.6 of a metre. Any higher than that and it could compromise the structural integrity of the house. So the idea of that is you can go to work, go on holiday, go to bed, and that will act for you as long as the door's locked. And then next to it, slightly cheaper, flood barriers. Now, they are excellent. Flood barriers, always look for one that's been tested to kite mark standards. But you've got to remember, you might get your flood warning at 3:30 in the morning. It's blowing a hoolie, and you have to put head torch on and go and fit the flood barrier. But as soon as the flood water's gone, you can get rid of it. We've also got gates, ordinary looking gates that the minute, provided you've got a solid wall, you shut that. They're expensive, but rather than the average flood these days, according to Aviva, 2023, £67,500. I would now think it's more like £80,000 to £100,000 to put your home back. So investment like this is money well spent. And we've also got things like non-return valves. So often they were used before they were used to stop flood water coming up, was to stop rats coming up your toilet. Now they're used regularly to stop sewage water coming up your toilet, and that's how I was flooded by sewage. Failing that, we've got toilet bung that's cheaper, that you can put down the toilet and pump up, and also lots of people have downstairs showers, so there's a shower bung there as well. We've got non-return valves for the dishwashers. I've talked to so many people that have opened up their washing machine after a flood and the flood water comes out all over the place. That would stop that. We've got them under the sink for toilet overflows and stuff. And then further into the Floodmobile, we've got a low-cost solutions area and a preparation for flooding area. 3,000 people who have flooded over the last 3 years. And a huge majority of them said they got the flood warning but didn't know what to do. So they lost their home and their car, for instance. So I advocate now for a flooding to-do list in the order that you would do for your family. And then over here I've got sort of solutions of how to prepare for a flood. I've got Wellington boots and buckets and plastic bins on table legs, plastic boxes to put your memories in, aluminium tape over the air brick, quick DIY solution, and it does keep the water out from an air brick. Those curtains are tied up in tights, decorators trestles with my sofa on. So there's so much you can do to prepare for a flood using stuff you've got about your home. So we've got that area. Then we've got obviously the big flood-ready house, and people love that because it shows all the interventions, all the different ways of how to keep water out, how a property can recover. And I've got my Wellington boots on the table legs and the sofa up in a preparation room as well. And then the bit that I'm most passionate about in this area, flood recoverability. So we can do our best to keep flood water out of a property. But look, if it gets in, let's adapt our homes to enable them to recover from a flood. So to give you an example, when I flooded, I had all the plaster off and I was flooded again 3 weeks later, and I could stand and watch water coming through the walls like somebody had turned on 30 taps. Now you can replace the mortar with a waterproof and breathable mortar and paint an invisible sort of cream solution over the bricks, and that will slow down the water ingress. The maths being 12.5 cubic litres of water an hour can come through the walls, but after those little interventions, 0.2 of a litre. So it's huge, and that's DIY-able. And then here we've got recycled plastic kitchens. So what a good use they are. They can be washed, they can be flooded, sanitised, dried and used again instantly. We're stood on recycled plastic flooring. We've got ceramic tiles, we've got examples of all sorts of kit that people can use to help the property recover. We've even got recycled plastic skirting boards and door architraves. And this plaster here, it's dragon board, it's magnesium oxide. It can be wet and it can be recovered within about 48 hours. It doesn't have to be knocked off. We've also got this membrane system, which, if you can imagine water's coming through the walls, goes behind the membrane system into this channel and then kicked out in a sump pump. I know somebody who's got this system, and he had a flood barrier at his door, and he and his kids were able to carry on living as if the flood outside wasn't happening. So really, that we've all got to really, I think, adapt is my word, to future flood risk.
Mary, I'm conscious that you are moving on to pastures new, and you have, as you said yourself, spoken to over 3,000 flood impacted people, which is a huge achievement. It's a huge weight to carry as well. If I was to offer you the Planet Possible magic wand, and given all that you have experienced and all of those conversations, what would be the one thing that you would want to make possible with that magic wand?
I would like everybody to be aware of property flood resilience, because everybody wants hard concrete engineered flood defences in front of their home. I look on flood risk management as a jigsaw of many pieces, so we can have the hard engineered defence and natural flood management. But if one of those jigsaw pieces moves, the home or the business is flooded. So even if people have got a flood defence in front of their home, to remember they're still at flood risk and to prepare their home for flooding, and most importantly, adapt so you can learn to live with water.
Thank you so much for joining us on Planet Possible, Mary.
That's my absolute pleasure.
As a global consultancy with extensive technical and advisory expertise, Arup works across the entire water cycle, with utilities, local and regional governments, commercial and domestic water users and partners. From designing and maintaining key water infrastructure services to advising on natural catchments and flood defences, Arup helps its clients consider long-term economic, environmental and social dimensions. Arup, like Planet Possible, is focused on making progress for our climate, water and nature. Local authorities have to deal with all the different ways that flooding can affect communities as a whole. I met Tor Coombes, Flood Risk Manager at Leicestershire City Council, to find out about the scale of the challenge. Let's start by understanding, for listeners that might not know, what's the role of a local authority, of a county council, when it comes to managing water?
That's a great question. So we've got a very grand title, the Lead Local Flood Authority. Sounds wonderful, but in honesty, it's difficult to explain. We have a strategic oversight for local flood risk, but obviously when we're talking about the bigger events, the bigger flood risk, it's the Environment Agency's sort of the main strategic responsible. So a lot of members of the public that we speak to think, oh, you've got this ability to control everyone else and make flooding go away. We don't. We just have an ability to oversee what's going on, identify actions and coordinate all those responsible organisations and bodies, bring everyone together, identify solutions and try and move actions forward to make things better for members of the public. So being a flood risk manager, really interesting and exciting. I love doing it. On a typical day, I coordinate my team and some of our strategic responsibilities. So that's things like responding on planning applications for surface water drainage matters, or we may be developing a project that might be helping a community. We might be out in the community speaking with people, so I might go out to a community that might be at particularly high risk. I might be out there. But also what I love most about my role is that having met people and being in this more strategic role, sort of a manager role, I'm out there with other agencies at the high level, and I've been fortunate to have been put on the Flood Resilience Task Force. So taking some of those local level stories and raising them with some people that are involved in policy and governance and high level, and thinking, right, how can we amend that to make people's lives better and put the people that are being flooded right back at the centre of the conversation. I think as technical agencies and bodies, we can sometimes get bogged down thinking, I know what the people want, but actually we really need to be in touch with the community, with the public, and that's the beauty of working in my job, is that I get to meet people, I get to make change and help people. And so taking that right back to the top, the minister, the environment agency, people that perhaps don't get to meet the people, so I get to sort of join those dots and bring them together.
It's really obvious just from listening to you for a few minutes that you're hugely passionate, like personally motivated in this space. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, where that comes from and what you've heard in your role that fires you up.
I've got a love for geography from school days, but for me personally it's about the people. I've spoken to so many people across Leicestershire and other when I worked for Derbyshire previously, that have had their homes completely ruined. The impact it has on them as their sort of working life, their pattern. But your home is where you want to go home to relax, and it's all gone. Then it's not just actually seeing the immediate after effects, it's the months and years after. It rings true to me, a particular lady I've met in one of our communities, whereby she really suffered from the mental implications of that, and it really stuck with me. She lost everything. To get back into their home, it was such a challenge, but also people want to help themselves. They want to get back. They want to know what the right thing is. And there's so many blockers in our industry, particularly with property flood resilience. And so I tried to take all of her points, and there's so many blockers in our industry, things that perhaps those of us that work in the industry don't see. For example, trying to recover from your property flooded, and you think, right, I'll go through my insurance company, and then they will send perhaps a contractor who's been sent in to try and help you sort of strip your house or identify what might need to go, might need to be saved. They send someone in from, say, Scotland, and you're living in Leicestershire. The time it takes, they go in and they might be a rogue trader as well. We've had a lot of that. As an industry, we're not set up to react quickly, and that, these people are out their homes for years sometimes. I just feel completely passionate about trying to spread that information and get that to the right people. I've been in the industry quite a while now. I'd like to think that I've grown in confidence. I want to use my voice to try and tell the right people these stories and these messages. And hopefully it resonates with those that are making those decisions, and hopefully then brings positive change.
You talked a little bit there about barriers, and I guess I'd be interested if I passed you the now famous Planet Possible magic wand and you gave it a wave. What would you like to make possible? And I guess is some of that removing some of those barriers potentially?
Absolutely. We definitely need policy change, and those in those positions are talking about making those changes. They're not going to happen overnight. We've spoken today at Flood and Coast about projects and how they help communities be more resilient or actually reduce floodwater getting to them. But from my perspective, it's about giving those communities the empowerment to be prepared, whether that's financially, whether that's giving them the resources, mental health support. When it rains, all I think about is all those residents that have been impacted. I would love to be there all over Leicestershire, but I can't. Giving them the confidence to know what to do in a community, but also I would love, if I had a magic wand, to give them much more funding. There's been a report out that said around property flood resilience, flood doors, flood barriers, but also amending your property to make it, if water came in, can you recover more quickly? I would love to be able to spread that message more, but also give funding more to help the most deprived communities in particular. But also there's so many people out there that want to help themselves. They don't have the finance capital at the minute. It's so frustrating. I'd like more opportunities to get the funding to those people at the bottom to help reduce the economic impact, because all that helps us as a council as well. So yeah, that would be my magic one.
That's amazing, Tor. Thank you so much for joining us on Planet Possible.
Thank you so much for having me.
So as I stand in the corner of the exhibition centre here in Liverpool, looking out of the windows across the tidal bit of the Mersey, and as the sun is beginning to set, I wanted to reflect a little bit on the conversations that I've had, and from being surrounded by a building full of people who care passionately about flooding and about our coastline. 3 things, I guess, have come to mind from those conversations. One is around the importance of working together. So both the conversation I had with Johnny and with Tim about really creating a sponge city in Liverpool, and also the chat with Tor around the role of the local authority, just really made me realise that you really can't do this alone, and people are really trying very hard to cut across those, silos that sometimes exist between organisations, different funding cycles, different organisational priorities, but trying to find a way to work together, because actually if we want to create spongy places that slow the flow of water down and stop flooding, then it's no one organisation's responsibility or capability to do that. So that's definitely a big theme from the conversations. The second really is around how there's innovation happening all over the place. And in particular, I loved hearing about the Aire Resilience Company, being really innovative in the way that we balance the risk of funding. So businesses that are at risk of being flooded are paying to reduce that risk by investing in nature-based solutions. It's genius, but it's taken a really big, coalition of organisations to do that. So really innovation, but also wider engagement with businesses and communities affected by flooding is also a theme that I've heard from that conversation and from others across the course of the 2 days. I think the final one, and it came out very loudly from talking to Flood Mary and also from talking to Tor, is about the importance of empowering our communities and customers to be able to make a difference themselves. So helping them understand their risk of flooding, understand their risk of shoreline erosion, and being able to then do something about it. So to be flood ready, to get prepared to make the necessary amendments that they need to their houses and to their communities. I'm looking forward to following up on some of these conversations over the course of future Planet Possible episodes. So until next time, stay curious, search for connections, and imagine what's possible.